poor. Access to credit for those living in poverty must be a human right. But we ask them to use labor as collateral. We will lend you at first up to 60 days. And every day is worth the minimum wage. If it's $5, $10, you multiply that. First loan we give is 60 days. So you multiply 60 by, if it's $10, it's $10. And then if it's better, next round we give you 90 days, 3 months, and then 120 days. And that's enough. And you have to do, you have to be trained in the Barefoot MBA, and you also have to have successful business and repay. And in the long term, we can pass them on to the regular government banks because they have such a very good track record of borrowing. This is the approach. And I talked to the Secretary General of the ASEAN, and I've suggested the name that we call this the new ASEAN endeavor to end poverty. And if you get every company, maybe we start out with Singapore, there are lots of companies everywhere. Every Singaporean company in every country adopts the village. Big ones like Temasek can do more than one, but and then you've got oil companies in every country, Thai-owned, Indonesian, Philippines. If every company that's above the water level takes on a village, and some take on more, before long, we wipe out poverty. It's not difficult, but we don't think out of the box. We think the UN can do it, the government can do it. The government can help infrastructure, but the government doesn't know how to make money. That's why they're privatizing everything, because they can't make the money. So I call this the privatization of poverty eradication.
It's working?
It's working.
How many companies, how many villages and companies are in this
We
partnership?
have about 700-800 villages, and we've had about almost 400 companies. Some companies take one village, some companies take more, but the 5 things in the village they do is income, community empowerment, health, education, environment, human rights, gender equality, democracy. All the things. It's no good to have good economic and good social conditions, bad democratic conditions. You've got to have the 3 things together. And of course, gender equality is very important. Everything we do, women must be in charge of half of it, everything we do. They asked me why. I said, because my mother's a woman. I said, you have problems with your mother? That's why you don't let women run your country, do more? I said, all these men who have problems with their mothers, wake up, let the women do something.
Now, are these programs in the poorest parts of Thailand?
Yes, they're in the poorest parts of the country. Northeast mostly, we have some in the north. And of course, some of them are sponsored by power companies.
Power as in electricity?
Electricity companies, because they're working in some areas that they would like to help the villages. And sometimes to minimize possible criticism also. So that's a group that does it. But generally, it's just ordinary companies. And we have now even a bride and a groom, an Australian banker and a Thai banker, a woman. They got married, and they send invitation, with their invitation, the project proposal, and told their friends, hey, when you come to our wedding, help this village that we're adopting.
You mean instead of giving presents?
Yes, we're adopting a village for our marriage. What a fantastic thing. I couldn't have thought of it. And they've been to the village, and their friends give money. The village is doing extremely well. We also have families adopting villages. Before we had companies. Now we have schools, universities, and newly married. And now we have grandparents adopting villages for their grandchildren, because they want the grandchildren to see the joy of doing public good. And these are twins. They've each taken on a village. And again, it's about $100 per head. So it's about $35,000 each. Each of these boy-girl twins, there are 3.5, have given what their grandparents have given. And in the hope that these kids will grow up knowing, enjoying, and feeling great that they have something to do with improving the lives of other people. So we're now, because of that, we're now moving ahead into the schools. We have some funding from the Gates Foundation to expand this village development partnership, to go to more companies in Thailand and Cambodia. But the other one we want to do is to go to the school kids and teach them the joy of doing public good. So the next generation of people will feel very comfortable about corporate social responsibility because they've been exposed to individual social responsibility. My promise is that I want to make, over my lifetime, at least 1,000 mini Bill Gates, and then we can tell Bill Gates, thank you very much for your money. We don't need it anymore. Would you work with us? We have some money for some other friend.
That would be something, yes. You had mentioned something about discussing this program with the Secretary General of ASEAN. Is this something that is being developed by ASEAN?
Well, he likes it, but we need to talk further. Mechai, he's got the money to help organize, but the money for implementation comes from the the companies. But what would be good is for each of the countries in the ASEAN region to give nice tax incentives to the companies that do it in their own countries. You don't need government money. You see, we've got to realize that no government, and I've said this before, no government can supply all the needs of all of its citizens. And therefore, bring in a third party to help. Used to be only foundations and associations, NGOs, but now companies with their corporate social responsibility can play a magnificent role in ending poverty. Not just charity, not CSR, that's not sustainable. This is totally, thoroughly sustainable.
The PDA under your leadership has achieved a lot with modest budgets and the enthusiasm of thousands of volunteers, especially in the rural areas. You just mentioned barefoot MBAs, and I believe there's barefoot IT teachers, and now ISR is being introduced. How do you get people to do this?
Well, you've got to act in a way yourself that you would like them to act, to follow. And we work together, we sit down, we think of ideas, and we move ahead. And you have to be able to communicate to them what you're trying to do. If you can't communicate it, they won't follow. In other words, I, for instance, have to have a proposal that makes sense for the corporations and give them a chance to go out and take a look. Before I ask any company to sponsor, I go and speak to them. I have a show of slides, and then I take them up country and say, take a look. Here's a village that's been adopted by company A or B, and here's one that's not been touched. You see the difference. And the success is from the people implementing it. So they're not just recipients. They are the planners. They sit down and do the plan. We teach them how to do it. They're the planners, they're the operators, they are the evaluators, and then the monitors. They report back to the company through a computer program.
Let me go back a bit more. Do the corporations that take part in your program, do they get tax incentives?
I would say they get a 2% tax deduction. I don't think that's much of an incentive. And I've asked for a meeting with the Minister of Finance to try to convince him to say, look, we can get a lot of people out of poverty without the government spending a cent, but by making tax incentives far more attractive. But that meeting's been moved 5 times, so I'm still waiting.
What still needs to be done in Thailand, in particular, and in Asia?
I would like to give one general answer which will encompass many, many things. For instance, I would say education. Now, the education to make you a thinker, to make you resourceful, to make you kind and generous, to make you patient, to make you see that you must solve the problem at its root cause rather than at its consequence. And for opportunities with education to be able to come back and work in your own community, in your own village, rather having to migrate to cities. So it's a whole combination, and of course, the respect of human rights. We've just produced 10,000 copies of the UN Declaration of Human Rights and given out to the school children in the villages to say, which human right, I bet you most of them didn't even know they had human rights, which of the human rights are denied in your community. And then they'll start to learn about human rights. So the UN's got to take a leaf out of this, be more active. Otherwise, what do we need the UN for?
Your program has been very successful. It has been the envy of a lot of NGOs and even governments in Asia. But is it applicable in other countries? In Asia, of course.
Well, if drinking water is applicable, this is applicable. What you're asking is for people and companies to work with those in real need, think together, plan together, respect each other, and do something in a sustainable way. I cannot imagine a country in Asia where this cannot be done or this won't work. It's very simple, very straightforward. It's not rocket science. It's very simple. Just think out of the box.
It can be done in Thailand. It can be done elsewhere.
Not because it's in Thailand, because it's basically done with ordinary people and together with business people. And you've got business people in every country and ordinary people in every country but there has to be mutual respect.